Noura Mansour is a strategist, community organiser and political analyst from Akka, Palestine. Her passion for racial justice and commitment to building people power are deeply rooted in her personal experiences as a Palestinian woman, academic training in politics, and professional journey as a teacher in Palestine 48, Akka and Nazareth, and her work as an organisational consultant with civil society organisations in Jerusalem and the West Bank. Noura has worked on building coalitions and international solidarity with civil society and grassroots organisations in Europe, Asia and now Australia on Wurundjeri country, where she currently lives with her husband and 2 sons. Welcome, Noura. We start our podcast asking each guest to reflect on the fact we're living on stolen land as beneficiaries of settlement, but also recognising we're victims, survivors of Western imperialism. So we ask each guest to reflect not only on their asal, their roots, their origin story, but which country do you live now, protest, fight, love and raise your children on?
Thank you, Randa and Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I have been lucky to live on Wurundjeri country for the last 11 years. And in the last 11 years have been a massive journey of learning from the, obviously, the amazing work that the First Nation people have been doing on this continent for decolonization and for Indigenous rights.
And tell us about your asal and how you, in your origin story, and how you came to be in so-called Australia.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Akka, beautiful coastal city on the Mediterranean. My parents, though, hail from different parts of Palestine, 1948, but still in the Galilee, in the Jalil. So my mother comes from a small village called Sha'ab in the Jalil, and then my father comes from Safad. Both my parents and my family became internally displaced during the Nakba in 1948, and my grandparents ended up fleeing from their respective cities and original towns. They fled to Haifa and then ended up settling in Akka.
And how did you get here?
How did I get here? It's a good question. Yeah.
We're trying to find like your origin story. What made Noura today?
Right,
that's the reflection on
so
the
I have
roots.
to talk about my,
as much as you'd like.
Sure. Okay, so how did I end up here on stolen land? So I met this amazing, fantastic guy.
I thought it was me. She's like, well, not me. It's amazing.
And Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here for Sarah. So I met my husband, who is Malaysian. As I was teaching internationally, I was teaching debating and public speaking, argumentation, refutation, and I met him in a conference in Europe. And then that was almost 13 years ago. I hope I didn't mess that one up. Because my husband obviously is Malaysian and I'm Palestinian with an Israeli citizenship, and as we know, Israel and Malaysia don't have diplomatic relations. Malaysia does not recognize the occupation of Palestine, obviously. And therefore, we needed to find a third party where we could both be together. Because as a Palestinian, but in 1948, similar to all, 20% of the Palestinians who are indigenous to their lands and remained on their lands after the 1948 Nakba, there are certain rights that we don't get despite the fact that we're citizens. One of these rights are the right of family reunification. So if you're a Palestinian in 1948 and hold an Israeli citizenship, and you would like to marry someone, say, from the West Bank, a Palestinian from the West Bank, or someone from Arab countries, or someone from Malaysia, or countries that don't have diplomatic relations with Israel, you don't have the right to family reunification. And therefore, you need to make difficult choices.
It's really interesting how those choices at the borders and constructed notions of citizenship impose these choices on you, and I guess that's no accident. You've described growing up in Akka in Palestine 48 as deeply formative. What did that world look and feel like for you as a young Palestinian girl or woman navigating occupation, these complex notions of identity and belonging, particularly given, as you said, you're a Palestinian with Israeli citizenship?
Akka is amazing, and it's fantastic, and it's the best place to be born and raised. And the people in Akka, the community is also, I owe my community so much because I'm here where I am today because of the support and because of all the lessons that I learned from my community back home in Akka. What was it like, though, as and this is probably a question, and this kind of also, sorry, I'll repeat that. What was it like for me growing up in Akka? I felt very protected within my community. I felt very empowered, and I felt that I have the support of literally everyone. And that's something that I can't find anywhere else. Having a community that is very supportive and is behind you. And I think that kind of power comes from being born on your land. Like there's some kind of, strength that you derive from just being born on your ancestral land. And you can't find it anywhere else, despite the fact that we live under occupation and apartheid in Akka and in Haifa and Nazareth. But the community there, you know that you are there because of your roots. And you are there despite your citizenship, not because of your citizenship.
Yes.
But generally speaking, what was it like? I mean, for Palestinians, when you're interacting with Israeli society, the first point of contact is already an interaction that is extremely hostile. It's an interaction that is very othering, and that kind of creates a situation where you're like, I'm on my land, but also I'm constantly being targeted. For instance,
surveilled, targeted. And just as a point of clarification for those who might not know, Akka we could describe as a Arab and specifically Palestinian, and that delineation, a Palestinian town, majority Palestinians, as opposed to other neighboring areas in this quote-unquote 48 sort of area of Palestine.
Yeah, so Akka, Haifa, and Jerusalem are what they call mixed cities.
Okay.
And they call them mixed city, that's because there are Palestinians, indigenous Palestinians, and there are Israelis as well, Israeli Jews who live there. And that is to make the distinction between, for instance, towns and cities like Tamra, like Shahin, Arabi, the land-day triangle, where you only have Palestinians living on these lands. So Akka, Haifa, Jerusalem, you have more interaction, daily interaction between both Palestinians and Israeli Jewish people.
What about Tel Aviv? That might be more familiar, say, to a lot of listeners as the quote-unquote capital of Israel. Would that be a majority Jewish or also mixed?
So just to kind of clarify, there are no majority of Palestinians, even in mixed cities.
Okay.
So the majority, like if you're looking at the percentage, in Akka it's 30% Palestinians. And that is the largest.
I suppose the way
Haifa.
you've always spoken about it as well, I think
Yes.
I just in my head imagined that that's what it was like.
Yes, because the Palestinian presence there and the Arab presence is so strong.
Yes.
And you can feel that obviously in Akka, you can feel that in Jerusalem, to a lesser extent in Jaffa, similarly in Haifa as well. But the identity of the place, you can't erase the identity of the place. It's there. It's with the mosques and churches and all of the, I guess, what is the word I'm looking for? المعالم شو معالم
like the signifiers,
Yes,
not for a lack of like
Yeah.
landmarks, not for a lack of trying from
And
their
like when
part.
you spoke about hostility, I think I was thinking about how like in 48 Palestine, they would be viewing you, the Israeli Jews, as the unfinished business of their colonization, extermination project. So there's that like looking at you as an existential problem, an existential reality. And the unfortunate residue of the first Nakba. That I just can't imagine how that would feel on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, so Benny Morris, who's an Israeli historian, made that point in his research that so he admitted to all of the horrific
Massacres
crimes and massacres against humanity, and that the Zionist militias have actually enacted in 1948. But he goes and he says that this was not enough actually to complete the Zionist project, and the fact that they left, quote unquote, Palestinians in 1948 in Israel is a mistake, and that they should have actually finished that business back then. Very often you hear Israeli politicians refer to Palestinians in 1948 as cancer, the cancer from within,
Demographic ticking bombs,
threats, and all these kind of like dehumanizing, also genocidal rhetoric. Demographic threats. You're putting a target on all of us, and you're making it a legitimate target. When you treat people when you label them as threats.
Did you go to school in a mixed school?
No. So despite the fact that this is, again, how apartheid manifests in 1948, despite the fact that you have mixed cities, you don't really have mixed schools. There are separate schools for Palestinians, Arabs, and for Israeli Jews. The curriculum for Arab school, however, is dictated by the Israeli Ministry of Education. And therefore, despite the fact that we go to separate schools, we learn what they want us to learn. Another, manifestation of the apartheid and settler colonialism as well.
So I suppose, building on that, they couldn't exterminate physically and remove our bodies, but everything else that they do and all these systems and structures exist to erase us one way or another. And so I'm really interested, particularly again for those outside of Palestine, and it can be really hard to comprehend. I mean, you can read and read and read, but when I went, experiencing it, not living it, but in the same way. But being there is a different, completely different experience that is very hard to reconcile. So for those that don't understand what it means to be a 48er, a 48 Palestinian, and you touched upon this with the example of the family reunification, with the education system, what does that term mean? What does it mean? And, what gets erased or misunderstood about your community and about your identity as a 48er?
So it's important to remind people that there's, again, 20% of the population in Israel are Palestinian indigenous who also hold the Israeli citizenship. And these people, approximately 2 million people, they are internally displaced people. So it's very rarely that you would find someone in 1948 who have actually remained in their original towns and cities. Another manifestation of what does it mean to be a 1948er, despite the fact that you live in 1948, and if you're, say, you're one of the people whose family was departed and exiled, and then the village was demolished in 1948, you still can return and rebuild those towns and villages. So the right of return then is not only something that refugees outside of Palestine have to deal with, but also Palestinians in 1948 cannot return and rebuild their original towns and cities. What does it mean? That means that, again, Palestinians in 1948 are a part and parcel of the broader Palestinian people. Experiencing apartheid in different ways, obviously, but still the same.
Yeah. It would feel such a trauma to be so close and unable.
Yes, but my father and my uncles used to travel all the way to Safad to look at their house. They can see their house there, and there's another, in Safad, it's predominantly like almost 100% Jewish residents, and Palestinians are not allowed
to go and see the thieves living in your house.
So they would go look at their house, take pictures, and sometimes try and speak to the people and explain to them that this used to be my,
And they would respond in American accents.
Yeah.
When did you first begin to see your voice as a political act? Was there a turning point or moment that shifted how you saw yourself as a Palestinian woman?
I wouldn't say there's a turning point, but I would say that the first point of contact with the Israeli society and being faced with societal, racism from Israeli society is something that, as someone who lives in Akka, for instance, it's something that is organic. Like, there's no turning point. This is your life. You are born, and then your neighbor tells you to speak to you in a certain way. Or you're walking and then you see on the walls, death to Arabs, or like a good Arab is a dead Arab. So that's the environment sending all this, hostile messages to you from a very young age. But also knowing that your neighbors, and that's something that we've experienced, like physical violence from neighbors when we dare to express our identity. For instance, when I was 5, I think that was probably around, I can't remember, but there was something that's happening in the West Bank. And obviously, another point that we really need to keep reminding people that Palestinians in 1948 don't exist in a vacuum. They have families in the West Bank and in Gaza, right? It's so I have family in the West Bank. And then at some point, I think one of my father's cousins was killed by the Israeli army. And then my father decided to put a black flag on the window. That didn't go well with our Jewish neighbors. And my father was physically attacked. So it's that kind of thing. When you dare to express your identity on your land, to use your voice.
To mourn.
To mourn, yes, that becomes an issue.
First Nations journalist and academic Amy Maguire writes that objectivity serves the powerful. And Mohammed Al-Kurd, a Palestinian activist and author, in his new book, which we have quoted a fair bit, to be honest, but it's seminal and it's come out recently, so it's definitely like still very much alive in our minds. In the book Perfect Victims, he writes powerfully, our suffering must be palatable to be believed. We must bleed beautifully, protest politely, and die quietly. So I was interested in your thoughts on, how you've seen this play out in the coverage of Palestinians, especially in recent times, and also how does that resonate with your own experiences navigating media and advocacy spaces?
So I sometimes wonder whether if media coverage was different on the Palestinian cause, would we be here today? Would we be here, in Gaza, 680,000 people killed? Would the dehumanization and the demonization of the Palestinian people be something that is so normal to the point where so many deaths don't even matter? And I wonder about the role of the media and how that plays out. We can compare, obviously, in the context of Ukraine and other, I'm not going to say conflicts,
crises.
And other crises. And we can look at the context of the Ukraine and other crises, other international dynamics. And it's just, I think, I honestly look forward to the day in which we have accountability, and the media corporation is also held accountable for the active role that they played in dehumanizing and demonizing Palestinians to the point where the deaths of children, where children are being burnt alive, where mothers have to bleed to death in hospitals, where 2 million people are being held hostage and bombarded on a daily basis and denied medical aid and food, starved to death, became something that is so normal. So to me, that is definitely, I look forward to accountability and reparation.
And we know, Noura, like when you said if the media had covered this differently, we know that it would have made a difference because social media and its coverage of the genocide has erupted a global movement of solidarity. So, yeah, absolutely, I agree with you that the corporate media is completely complicit, not just in ignoring what's happening, but actively manufacturing consent for it.
Yeah.
You've worked in solidarity movements from Korea to Australia. What's the most effective form of international solidarity you've witnessed? And a tricky question, what mistakes do allies often make? And we're saying this because we want, as this podcast, we do want to interrogate what solidarity means, how we can build a stronger movement as our voices grow and our collective solidarity grows.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. Let's start with the mistakes and then we talk about what's more effective.
Absolutely.
Just to end on a happy note.
Yeah.
I think, and maybe I want to address the mistakes that not just allies make. Maybe, community like us, what kind of mistakes we made and how can we learn from them. Yeah. I think one mistake that I noticed is assuming that everyone is on the same page or the same phase or stage of their journey, assuming that everyone has the same understanding of the cause, same lived experience, or even same politics or same relationship with power. And that is a massive mistake. I think we need to be a little bit more nuanced when we talk about the cause, not in a way that compromises the message or the core value of the cause. Like our cause is a very straightforward, like it's a cause for justice, for human rights, self-determination, decolonization. This is what it is. So we can't undermine that, and it's a cause. It's a national liberation cause as well. So I think we need to try and find a way to bring people along the journey in a way that benefits our cause, because I don't think alienating people or having that kind of
or shaming them,
shaming them, that kind of assuming the moral superiority. I mean, people haven't lived my life or your life, and they haven't had your parents and my parents, and they haven't had they didn't grow up in the same communities as us. So I think we need to hold that constantly when we talk about the cause and when we work in organizing.
It's a fine line though between civility and respectability politics.
Yes,
to be fair.
Yes, it's true. We just and by it's not about, definitely not respectability politics. It's just about knowing where people at and how do I bring them along the journey. If I misassess where certain groups stand on certain matters, then I can't take them along with me. It's just studying really advocacy and studying how do we shift public opinion and how do we. Because this is really important. This is our work.
Strategic.
Right? And this is what people back home want us to do. They're like, go and do the work in your communities. Make the change in your communities.
Yeah. Those are the mistakes.
Those are the mistakes.
Where's the happy note?
I think what's been effective is having I'll repeat that. I think what's been effective is not falling for that reactionary low-hanging fruit kind of strategy or approach, because we can't afford to be short-term, because we know that our fight is for the long run, and we know that we are not in it. Specifically when you're up against the power that we're up against, right? Yeah. It's Zionism, it's the Western government. It's also authoritarian governments in the Middle East and Arab countries. So when you realize who you're up against, you also realize what progress means, and you realize that you need a long-term strategy. So for me, what's effective is actually building coalitions, building relationships, being more strategic, and being, informed, evidence-based, studying,
values
what works,
aligned.
Values aligned, absolutely values aligned, and doing that consistently, all the time. Yeah. Not one person doing that consistently all the time, but also that's thinking about longevity and having a long-term strategy and just working towards that.
Yeah. The ceasefire news has brought mixed reactions, let's say, a relief, skepticism, grief, anger, and I wanted to know how you're reading this, given your wealth of experience and work in these spaces. How are you reading this moment, and what do you want, to tell the world about this ceasefire? What does it actually mean on the ground?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you have had experience working or dealing with Israel, as we have all as Palestinians, you know that Israel doesn't believe in ceasefires. You know that Israel uses ceasefire as a tactic to achieve military objectives. The last 2 years, despite all of the resources and the support and the political coverage that Israel has received from governments around the world, it has failed to achieve its declared objectives as to why it is conducting a genocide in Gaza. So what are these objectives? These objectives were obviously eliminating armed resistance in Gaza, and also releasing or freeing the hostages. So we can see that hasn't happened 2 years on. It's in a crisis, military-wise. The military goes always to Netanyahu and says, we can't achieve these objectives. These are unrealistic objectives. You cannot achieve them militarily. The other undeclared objective is the ethnic cleansing, obviously. And this has always been the end goal of Zionism and Israel, which is the ethnic cleansing and really the removal of Palestinians from Palestine, be that through genocide or forced eviction, mass expulsion, and these kind of tactics. So as Israel fails to achieve its objectives through military means, it is using the ceasefire to achieve some of these objectives. One of them is being currently releasing the hostages.
What's undeniable, though, is that even though it's failing its so-called military objectives, aka completing, the project, the extermination project or annihilation of our people, it's also trying every other means available. And I'm, to go back to the point on what's being effective, it has been heartening to see that people are seeing through the myths, the PR machine that's increasingly being dismantled or eroded. We're chipping away at it. Would you agree?
Yes, 100%. They're definitely also, so on the military level they're failing, but also on the PR and diplomacy level internationally they're also failing. I think internal politics as well is not doing great, and this is why, despite the ceasefire, there's been bombings in Lebanon, there's been still some kind of attacks in Gaza, and Netanyahu's government is in a really bad position internally, and will be looking at how do they, capitalize on this electorally, given the fact that there will be elections next year in Israel.
How much does internal politics have a bearing on, the colonial project? I mean, because we've heard time and again, one of the kind of the tropes or the recurring themes is this is just a right-wing government. And I would hope at this point that most people understand that this isn't a specific Netanyahu or a right-wing extremist government. Like, this is actually the very core and identity of what Israel as a settler colonial project is.
Yeah, so what we're seeing now in Gaza is peak Zionism. Yes. Right? This is the embodiment of the Zionist project on its peak. So when it comes to Zionism and Zionist ideology, there's no difference between the right and left when it comes to Palestinians. If you think about, if you just, go back in the Palestinian political timeline, the second intifada was started by Ehud Barak, who's a left-wing and Labour party. So when it comes to Palestinians, regardless to, whether they're in 1948, West Bank or Gaza or outside of Palestine, refugee camps or in the diaspora, there is consensus within the Israeli political spectrum.
Our annihilation on all sides of the spectrum is what they can agree on.
Slow or fast genocide.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah. That's the disagreement. Is it slow or is it fast? Yeah. And how many do we eliminate? Yes. Do we keep 10%? Do we keep 5%? And what do we do with the ones that we keep? How do we further restrict and restrain and assimilate?
So it's just like a genocidal logistics plan.
Exactly.
That's really the internal politics, politique, or the extent of the internal politique.
Yes, and you can also see that there hasn't been massive pushback or against, let me repeat that. You can also see that there hasn't been a massive pushback from within the Israeli political sphere or people for the nation-state law. When Israel passed the nation-state law, that Israel is the state of the Jewish people. I mean,
so the nation-state law, I think that was 2018 when it was introduced, and you didn't see a lot of pushback there.
Yes.
Noura, you've dedicated your life to education and movement building. So what gives you hope in this moment? What or who keeps you going?
You, Randa. You give me hope. You and Sarah. I honestly, my people give me hope. I think about my people back home and, my people in Akka and all of the amazing work that we've done and the fact that we've built so much with very little. And when we had everything stacked against us, that is hope. To me, what gives me hope? My sons, right? I mean, why do I do this kind of work that I do? It's because I have two amazing, cute, cheeky little boys, and they're brown, and I want them to live in in a world where, their color or their ethnic, religious identity or whatever physical manifestation is not perceived as a threat, but in a world where they're seen for their full potential.
Where they're free, to quote Dr. Chelsea Wadago.
Yes. So we now have this sort of rapid fire fun part of the...
Promise it's fun.
Yes,
we promise.
Yeah. The first question we want to ask you is words we live by. Is there a quote, a verse, piece of writing that has been anchoring you, particularly at this time?
There are heaps, and I think there are too many good ones to quote one. But I think something that my mother told me that always stuck with me, and that's when I became a new mom, and I had my baby, and I was like, he was 1 week old, and he was crying, and I was like, but look at him, he's so tiny, and he's crying all the time, and he's 1 week old, and I don't know what to do. And she said, Noura, he's only going to be 1 week old once in his lifetime. Things will change, and just remember that things will always keep changing. So I think that's, the fact that things will constantly change, to hold that kind of thought, that even when it's really hard and difficult, things will change. But also when things are really easy, that will also change. So that's been
Mother's wisdom.
Yeah.
Mother's wisdom.
Yeah. Don't be fooled by the ease either, and the hardship. What's something you're no longer apologizing for?
Oh, nothing. I'm not apologizing for anything.
Son.
I think nothing. No apologies.
Absolutely nothing.
Us, like as colonized people, as people of color, as women of color, we have nothing to apologize for. I mean, apologize for what? Like surviving against all odds? Apologize for existing? I think the world owes us an apology.
Oh, this is the best answer.
Honestly, the world owes us an apology. They owe us accountability, and they owe us reparations. And we're not apologizing anymore.
Last question. If you could send our listeners a decolonial feminist care package, what would be in it?
Ooh, I would actually. I think our Islamic Arabic culture is extremely feminist. And there's something, I think it's maybe a hadith that says, never undermine yourself, never undermine your work, never undermine others. So I think that is really something that all of us need to keep in mind. Self-care, but also how do you care for yourself? Which is an Islamic Arabic value as well. Like it's a duty. You have the duty of care not only towards others, but also towards yourself. And how to hold these values in a highly capitalist, colonial, patriarchal society is really a challenge where I constantly have to remind myself that culturally I have the duty to care for myself as well as others, and not to undermine myself, not sacrifice yourself. This is not what, this is not what's gonna free Palestine or create a better world. We shouldn't be sacrificing ourselves nor others.
I love that. Thank you so much, Noura Mansour, for joining us today on Two Pals in a Pod.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.